Okay, I want to speak about something that is a very important constitutional issue in the UK, um, and it's called the West Lothian Question. Now, before I continue with this, I want to make some things clear. When I talk about these sort of subjects, I don't try to pretend that I'm someone that I'm not. What I mean by that is I do not claim to be an expert on any subject, particularly one as complex as this. I'm not a legislator, I'm not a professor, I'm not an academic on this subject. I'm someone who's interested in politics and has a view. So that's it. I'm not going to pretend that I know more than I actually do, because the issues are complex. Any constitutional issue is complex, and I have no doubt that there are people out there who know a great deal more than me. Although I suspect there's others who know less than me as well, because they don't follow politics as much as I do. So basically, I'm not pretending to be anything that I'm not. So if people who disagree with me come on and say, you don't know this or you don't know that, you know what? That's right, I don't. I'm not pretending that I do. But that doesn't mean I can't have an opinion on something. So the West Lothian Question, I'm going to read directly from Wikipedia. Again, let me justify this. Wikipedia is a controversial source because it is made by users. However, the thing about Wikipedia that people forget to say is that those who contribute to articles need to provide sources, so that's the important point. Wikipedia is accessible, it's easy, that's why I use it. These videos are not intended as anything other than my opinion, that's it. They're not intended, well, most of them are not intended to sort of promote campaigns or anything like that. If I was a politician, I'd have responsibility to really do my homework on this, but as it stands, I'm just going to speak on my basic views on it. But first of all, I'll read the basic Wikipedia article, the first few paragraphs. The issue of English votes for English laws, commonly known as the West Lothian Question, refers to whether MPs from Northern Ireland, Scotland and Wales, sitting in the House of Commons of the United Kingdom, should be able to vote on matters that affect only England. The term was coined by Enoch Powell MP in 1977 after Tam Daly, Labour MP for the Scottish constituency of West Lothian, raised the matter repeatedly in the House of Commons debate on Scottish and Welsh devolution, as he would continue to do throughout the 1970s and 1980s. Since the establishment of Welsh and Northern Irish assemblies and the Scottish Parliament of the 1990s, the question took on a new urgency, and in 2011 the Government of the United Kingdom set up a commission to examine it. The Commission on the Consequences of Devolution for the House of Commons, chaired by former Clerk of the House of Commons Sir Willie Mackay, published a report in 2013 which proposed various procedural changes, including that legislation which affects only England should require the support of a majority of MPs representing English constituencies. The West Lothian Question has again come to the fore following promises of greater devolution for Scotland made during the 2014 Scottish independence referendum campaign. Now, the reason that I've decided to talk about this today is because the leader of the Scottish National Party, Nicola Sturgeon, has said that she is going to have her party representatives in Westminster vote on English issues. She's pushing ahead with this. Now, to me, that reeks of hypocrisy. I've made no secret of the fact that I'm no fan of Scottish nationalists. I'm staunchly against nationalism. I staunchly believe in the United Kingdom. But I do believe that the West Lothian Question is one that is going to come to the forefront. Now, the reason I say Mrs. Sturgeon's position is hypocritical is because her entire politics is based on independence, on the whole idea that Scotland should be for Scotland. And yet, she is sticking her nose into issues that impact England in particular. I think a lot of people in England are going to be justified in thinking that's very unfair, and they're going to think, wait a second, the government's given all these concessions and all these promises to the Scottish nationalists in the wake of the referendum. What about England? And for that matter, what about Wales and Northern Ireland? It seems to a lot of people outside Scotland that Scotland is like a child having a tantrum and basically getting everything at once, but England doesn't get everything at once. So, of course nationalists will say they're not happy they didn't get independence, but I am concerned at just how much ground the government is giving them. You can't have a United Kingdom based on one nation constantly trying to blackmail the rest of the country by saying, "Oh, if you don't give us this, we're going to declare independence." I think that is no way to have unity in a country. So the Scottish nationalists need to accept that they had the referendum, they lost, and they are part of the United Kingdom. And as part of the United Kingdom, they can't get everything they want. That's how democracy works. You don't get everything that you want. But anyway, regarding the West Lothian question, this is what it comes down to. If you have, say, for example, a hospital in Worcester, just for the sake of argument, that is facing cuts. This is a random example. Why should an MP from, I don't know, Dundee or Perth be allowed to vote on that specific issue that has nothing to do with them or their constituents? It's different if the issue is, for example, crime levels in Dundee. The point is, if it's an issue that impacts a specific English constituency, why should Scottish or Welsh or Northern Irish MPs be allowed to vote on that? And this is the reason it's unfair, because English MPs are not allowed to vote on issues that are devolved to Scotland, Wales or Northern Ireland. Now, so much for England dominating the UK. If I was English, I would actually feel quite aggrieved by that. I'm not English, I'm Northern Irish, but I can see where there's a big controversy with this. So I believe that now the referendum has been held, especially leading up to the general election, these sort of constitutional issues are going to need to be addressed. And for so long it's been about what's best for Scotland, what's best for Scotland. How about England, Wales and Northern Ireland? They matter as well. It's not that Scotland's not important, but I do feel people in the other free home nations are going to start to get tired of hearing about Scotland and what Scotland wants, because England matters as well. 54 million people live in England. It's the bulk of the United Kingdom population. So, it is important. My concern about the West Lothian issue is that if it is not solved, it is going to promote English nationalism. I actually do believe in some form of English Parliament. Maybe not in London. I believe that we should keep the national Parliament in London. It's been that way for 1,000 years. I don't see any major issue with changing that. However, and this is something that people sometimes misunderstand, they think if you support the United Kingdom then you're somehow against federalism. When I say I have no problem with the United Kingdom capital and the main government being in Westminster, that's what I mean. I have no problem with that. And too many people see London as the enemy. I don't think it's as black and white as that. I think you can still have federalism. You can have a situation, something similar to Germany, whereby regions get a lot more power, and there's already rigorous discussion underway for big cities like Manchester and Leeds and Sheffield to have some sort of autonomy. I think that might be a good idea. I also support the idea of directly elected mayors to big cities. Just to big cities, not to small cities. But US-style mayors in big cities I think could be a good idea. I think it's worked in London. I think it could work in other big cities. But there'd have to be a threshold. I mean, it could work in Birmingham or Manchester or Glasgow, but not... actually, I don't know if the federalism issue is being proposed in Scotland. I think it's more specific for northern English cities. There's even been talk of a megacity forming in the north of England. Leeds, Manchester, Sheffield and Liverpool sort of cooperating together. That might work, but it would be very complex. So there's a lot of constitutional questions in the wake of the Scottish referendum, and one of the most pressing is the West Lothian question. Incidentally, West Lothian, if you're wondering where that is, it's the area around Edinburgh, the county around near Edinburgh. I think actually Edinburgh is surrounded by Mid Lothian. Mid Lothian itself was famous for William Ewart Gladstone. William Ewart Gladstone, he campaigned rigorously there. But anyway, I believe this issue needs to be solved because English nationalists, and at the moment they're actually a very, very, very small contingent, will probably start to gain populism if this issue is not addressed. And that concerns me. I'm wary of any sort of nationalism. I'm not opposed to devolution and I'm not opposed to federalism, but I am very wary of outright nationalism. And that's, I've been very outspoken against Scottish nationalism. I would be equally outspoken against English nationalism. I support the English having their own parliament, and I support some degree of devolution, but what I am very wary of is any sort of nationalism that breaks up the United Kingdom. The United Kingdom is our country. That's not going to change. And I'm sick and tired of people being so negative about the UK. The UK is great as a United Kingdom. And the diversity within this country is something to be celebrated. It's not a hindrance. It doesn't mean the different parts should break away. I mean, I've used this analogy before. Texas and New York could not be more different, but they're both American states. The south of Italy is very different from the north, but it's both Italy. And there's many other examples. So, having diversity within a country, cultural diversity, landscape diversity even, is not a bad thing. So just because Scotland and England is different culturally in many ways, doesn't mean they should separate. And that also applies to Wales and Northern Ireland. Northern Ireland, of course, is complex in itself, because there's the issue of the 6 counties and whether that will go back to the Republic. I suspect if any home nation breaks away from the United Kingdom in my lifetime, it's most likely to be Northern Ireland. Because, for one thing, there's much less support on the mainland, or at least much less, support might be the wrong word, but there's less sort of enthusiasm for Northern Ireland on the mainland than there is for Wales or Scotland. There seems to be less of a, and that is something that bothers me, being from Northern Ireland and feeling British. It does, sometimes I feel a bit irked off that Northern Ireland is left on the sidelines and people forget it is actually part of the United Kingdom, it's not another place. But anyway, that's another issue. So, I really believe this issue needs to be solved. There needs to be a sense of fairness all round, not just for Scotland, but there needs to be a sense of fairness in England as well. Now, Labour is playing games on this. The Tories are completely for English MPs voting on English issues. Labour is against it. I think one reason is politics. They have a lot of MPs in Scotland. Scotland's a big heartland for the Labour Party. I think it would be a grave mistake if Labour decided to get in bed with the SNP in any sort of coalition government. I believe that would be disastrous. I think, forget any controversy over Liberal, Democrat, Conservative coalition, I think it would be absolutely catastrophic for this country if Labour gets into bed with the Nationalists. That will be the end of the United Kingdom, in my opinion. That's not scaremongering, that's my honest opinion. And it would also put to shame any sort of guilt that Labour has tried to put on the Lib Dems for getting in the coalition. If they go ahead with this, and it's being speculated that they're considering it, having some sort of coalition government with the Scottish Nationalists, I would never vote Labour again for the rest of my life. And at the moment I'm a swing voter. There's areas of Labour I strongly agree with, but if they do that, and it destroys the UK, I will never vote Labour in my life. So Ed Miliband should think very, very carefully about that. I understand why they're doing it, because Scotland has a lot of Labour MPs, but it's still not a reason to get in bed with a party that wants the end of the United Kingdom. Some might say it would rein in the Nationalists. I don't think it would. I just think it would give them more power to go ahead with their agenda, which is breaking up the United Kingdom. So yeah, as you can see, these issues are very, very complex. I don't grasp everything. I'm still learning about this, but for me, my instinct is this West Lothian question needs to be solved. And there is going to be growing resentment in England if it isn't solved, because English MPs are going to be resentful of the fact they're not allowed to vote on issues in the other 3 home nations, and yet Scottish and Welsh and Northern Irish MPs can vote on issues affecting England. That does seem unfair. Let me know your thoughts to my British viewers, or if you're an outsider and you're utterly confused by this, I'll try to explain it as best I can. But again, I don't understand all the issues. I'm still sort of developing my knowledge on this. I just think that it needs to be solved, and I think because in the next general election there's a very strong chance we're going to have another coalition government. The question is, what is that going to consist of? Personally, I think the best coalition would be Lib Dem Labour, but there's still a lot of hostility between the 2 parties, so I don't think that's going to happen. It's hard to imagine another Tory Lib Dem coalition, because I believe the Lib Dems are going to be hit hard in this election. Tory UKIP coalition, to me, that would be absolutely, for anyone who is on the political left or the political centre, that should raise alarm bells. Labour, SNP, again, that should raise alarm bells for anyone who cares about the survival of the UK. So I think the best approach would be Lib Dem Labour. You have centrist Lib Dems and a more left-wing Labour Party, that would lead to a moderate government.